here's a really important thing. When we're getting back to the three different epicenters being to this quake, I had wondered how on earth they managed to get three different epicenters, because what I believe they did, and obviously I can't prove it unless I talk to Netanyahu, but what I believe they did for their operation is they planted these nuclear weapons inside of Fukushima. They planted the Stuxnet virus. They dropped a nuke off the coast of Japan, and in the official releases they said the earthquake happened in the Japan Trench, but when you overlay the map put out by the USGS and by the Japanese with Google images, with Google Maps, when you overlay them, this earthquake or this event happened, well before the Japan Trench. It actually happened in the shallower water before the trench.
All right. Well, let's just hold on there. We'll go back with that list and we'll start when we come back. Because I don't want to, I want to keep it nice and I don't want to stop right in the middle of anything important. So hold on. And welcome back, Jim. Now, I was looking when I was going through your in the break, and I looked at number 28, which is Browns Ferry inner containment door, and Fukushima was thicker, and I was like, wow. And that
yeah. And I don't know if I'm going to be able to get to everything, but yeah, we're talking about these facilities were robust. The whole thing about hydrogen blowing them apart is just a pipe dream. It would not happen. We got a NORAD-style blast door there.
See, this is what I like about what you got here is you're not just saying this like the container couldn't handle it or whatever. You're showing a picture of it and it's like, whoa, that is a big door.
Yeah. Browns Ferry is actually overbuilt too. That's the TVA. They wanted a high quality facility. The door does not necessarily have to be that thick.
Yeah, but when you said overbuilt, I don't think that word exists when you're talking about nuclear power, which could, destroy the planet, So, I like overbuilt.
Like what I said, the Mark I containment got a lot of ridicule because it was too thin, and people knew that, and so they had it overbuilt, and that's how they answered it. Obviously, that door at Browns Ferry is not 4 feet thick. I didn't really scale it out, but it's more than 4 feet. Anyway, I'd like to point everybody to link number 16, and
okay.
That's a military briefing with Secretary of Defense William Cohen back in 1997. Now, I had heard about scalar weapons and EM technology and all this other stuff and how destructive they could be, but I didn't believe it because I had a really good technical background, and it just sounded like it was fantasy. And the reason why it sounded like fantasy to me was because I could only relate to what I'd been taught and what I'd experienced with and everything else. Well, so when reviewing the seismic data for that supposed 9.0, though, I knew that there were like 3 small simultaneous inland epicenters. You can tell that. That's why I went over that first chart. There were 3 epicenters. You don't have 3 epicenters on one quake. That just doesn't happen. And so I knew right from the beginning that these quakes were artificially created, and I didn't know if Japan was doing nuclear tests and Israel got wind of them and started their operation based upon the timing, that their intelligence need these 3 nukes as a natural earthquake. I didn't know if Israel had gotten access to lava tubes and tunnels and gotten the nukes underground to set them off, and so I wasn't saying anything because I was hunting for lava tubes. I was trying to get information on Japan maybe doing a nuclear test. Well, it turns out I didn't really need to because in this article, this military briefing from Secretary of Defense William Cohen, he stated, here's a quote, "Others are engaged in even an eco-type of terrorism whereby they can alter the climate, set off earthquakes and volcanoes remotely through their use of electromagnetic waves. So there are plenty of ingenious minds out there that are at work finding ways in which they can wreak terror upon other nations. It's real, and that's the reason why we have to intensify our efforts, and that's why this is so important." William S. Cohen, in April 28, 1997. And what was left unsaid by William Cohen, obviously, is that these systems would have been developed by DARPA and owned by America first. He's worried about other people having it, obviously, but obviously we have it. We're always the first ones with everything like this. I mean, maybe the Russians, but definitely we had our own systems at that time. And what is spooky about this is the fact that he said this in 1997, which means that all the way back in 1997, we had equipment that could set off volcanoes and trigger earthquakes, and he knew about it and stated it in a military briefing. Well, we're now 14 or 15 years down the road. Obviously, we've gotten better at it. And now I'm going to say these three quakes with different seismic signatures occurring at different locations at the exact same time and getting recorded at the same quake, as the same quake, most likely were triggered by an EM weapon. And that is how they got the timing they needed to set up a tsunami bomb, to set up, to activate Stuxnet. You know, they had everything ready to go. This is 100% false flag right from the start. At first, I kind of thought that maybe they had a natural earthquake because Japan has them all the time, and they just sat around waiting for it. Now I don't think so. I don't think so. I think that they actually triggered the quake.
Well, I mentioned, I know I didn't read it yet, but you have number 18 there was Benjamin Fulford. I remember him saying quite a while ago, and I don't know what, there's various different opinions about Benjamin Fulford, but he did mention that they, and it was a interview with an official in Japan who said that they were blackmailed, basically, and threatened with an earthquake device.
You know, it all makes sense. What I believe is that Japan is currently under a nuclear threat. I think what they did was they said, you know, you're going to enrich uranium for Iran. You're now our enemy. And we can't have people running around and supporting our worst enemy, Iran. You're on par with them. So what we're going to do, we're going to blow up Fukushima. We're going to give you a really bad tsunami so that you know that we're serious. We've got 5 other nukes off the coast of Japan, and we're going to set those off. If you don't say that earthquake, that little 6.8 was a 9.0 out in the ocean, if you don't say that Fukushima blew up because you were negligent, if you don't go down this list and say exactly what we want you to, we're going to set off other nukes and wipe out Tokyo with a tsunami. We're going to wipe out other port cities or other ocean cities with a tsunami. I really think that Japan is being held a nuclear hostage. It's the only thing that can explain why they're going along with this. You know, and it's the only, they know, Japan knows that those reactors are gone, and yet they're not saying anything about it. They're not saying a thing. They know that reactor 4 was defueled, and they're not saying a thing. They know all of this stuff, that it couldn't have happened, that they lost control of their nuclear facility, and the thing blew up all on its own, and yeah, they know all this, and they're being quiet, and there's got to be a reason why, and the only reason would be a continued threat. And so that loops onto another thing is now we've got a nation running around. I'm really, really worried about what's going on in the heartland right now with the floods and the storms, which I don't believe are real. I mean, they're real, but I think they're synthetic.
They are suspicious. I mean, I've lived in this area all my life, and I just started noting in the late 90s odd patterns, and the last couple of years have been way odd. And these storms are coming in like blockbuster. You know. Yes, I have on my site a picture of one of the beams that makes the clouds. I actually got that. Oh.
And I actually wrote, but I removed it to put that front page up. But I've actually got, I actually had an article about HAARP and weather modification up. I've got, should be able to find the file name here.
Yeah, I looked at that initially. That was your front page before the show started.
Yes. It was there, and I removed it for this show. But basically, what that image shows, is a beam coming out of the southwest corner of Delaware, and it looks like it's about 300 miles long.
Oh, yeah, I've never seen it. No, yeah.
Yeah, it's a perfectly straight beam of perfectly straight. It's like the weather is being formed along this and it's straight edge sharp. You don't get that kind of stuff. And the regular clouds are moving around it in their odd forms, and it only appears for one frame and a weather radar, and it's done. You have to see it to know what I'm talking about. Now, if you type gemstonefreelance.com/HARP type system, that's the name of the JPEG. You're going to get a diagram of how HARP can be used to heat the atmosphere and trigger weather. Okay, now that's kind of like off topic for Fukushima, except for now people are convinced that when you get a nuclear reactor wet, it explodes. When you flood a nuclear, it explodes. It loses its generator and it explodes. That's a dangerous precedent because right now these storms along the Mississippi are being artificially made. I'm sure of it, and they are trying their darndest to flood out several different nuclear facilities along the Mississippi. And if they can do that, these elites, they may not have been happy with Japan for offering enriched uranium to Iran, but pretty much the whole world is their enemy. If you're not going to sit down and be their willing slave, they're going to find a way to make you a willing slave. And if they succeed in causing another Fukushima in America that takes out our heartland with nasty radiation so that we can't eat the food, we're going to have famines. We're going to have a reason for the FEMA camps to open up. Most of the people that listen to this broadcast know about the FEMA camps. What Jesse Ventura did with his FEMA camp expose. It was pretty well done, because he did the threat fusion centers, but he never really did get a picture of a real FEMA camp. Back in 2003, I followed an internet tip, and I actually did. And these FEMA camps, they are nasty beyond belief. It's like, the compound that I found was called a military hospital, but there was no military base. It's a long story, but it was called a federal. It was like a military federal psychiatric treatment facility. And I accidentally happened upon the fence where there was a guard shack, and I whipped a U-ray real fast and panicked. But what I saw was razor wire stacked 12 feet high on the inside, in like a triangle formation, and then a corridor, and on the inside that's like closest to me, along the outer fence, there's an electrical fence on the end of giant insulators that like are the type that you see on power poles, and warning signs everywhere of 27,000 volts. It's
actually, let me pop in here. The thing with these FEMA camps is that there's not a lot of them, and so they can't be for the general public. There's just too many of them. I think they're going to be used, but they're going to be used for specific people for specific reasons, and the rest of us, are just going to be out here. They're going to be used to keep people out just as well as keep people in.
Well, yeah. Well, I think if you're running around just doing an expose on Fukushima, you're probably.
Yeah. Well.
I'm a little bit worried about those.
I mean, the good news is that it seems to me that for the most part, the powers that be, are extremely arrogant, and that that's another thing. The arrogance is unbelievably strong, and the intelligence is not very high. So the first to go are going to be the ones who can yell the loudest, so to speak, I think. And granted, even though this data is very good and damaging, and this could get out, this could go viral, but it seems that if they can do this to Japan, as you've outlined, which is very feasible, they're beyond what, quote, we can do. I mean, it's like Ron Paul or anybody. What can someone do? I mean, this is well beyond.
We have pretty much a hopeless situation.
Yeah, I know. So it's like they're sitting back going, sure, go ahead. Do your radio show. Do your stuff. Tell people what to do. Because if we are in the midst of drowning the Midwest, if we are in the midst of creating all this stuff, I mean, it can't be stopped by us unless there's a metaphysical component to us, or Jesus comes, or aliens, or something.
You could shut it down in a day, and everyone has access to these people.